righty. Let's see. So I think we're going to get started. So thank you everyone for joining the January Coastal Beach Water Quality Workgroup joint meeting. We have 3 presenters today covering quite a few topics of interest. But first things first, we wanted to go through some introductions and then go through any agency updates as well, just so we can kind of hear from everyone on the call. So my name is Beverly Scharnhorst. I'm the current Sea Grant Fellow with the Ocean Standards Unit. And what I would like to do first is go over some of the meeting controls. So if you have a question, there is a raise hand feature, or you can put it in the chat and we can answer them that way as well. And yeah, I think we can get started. So first things first is we'll go through some local agency updates. So we'll just ask that you provide your name, your affiliation, and then any updates that you would like to share. So we'll just go through the list. So is anyone from East Bay Parks on the call this morning that would like to give any updates? Okay, let's see. So we'll move down to Humboldt. Any updates from Humboldt? Anyone's on the call? Let's see. Okay, let's move down to Long Beach. Is anyone from Long Beach on the call?
Hi, good morning. It's Keith Allen, Water Quality Program Supervisor for City of Long Beach Environmental Health. I don't have any updates for you this morning, but good morning to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we'll move down to Los Angeles.
Ashley Duong. I am the Chief of Recreational Waters Program, and I have updates due to recent fires of Palisades and even fires. We had closed our beaches from Las Flores State Beach to Santa Monica State Beach, and also we had collaborate with state CDPH to collect samples at various locations at 12 stations for heavy metals and any contaminants. So we had the first batch of sample we collect was on January 1st, 2022. January 1st, 2022. And the second batch is after the rain. So it was on Monday, January 1st, 2027. I think that's it. Any questions or anything? Hi, everybody.
Don't think there's any questions that I see in the chat or anything, but thank you, Ashley, for sharing the update. We appreciate it. Let's see. We'll move down to Marin County. Anyone from Marin on the call?
Hi, good morning. This is Aarti Kundu. I'm the project manager in Marin County Environmental Health Services. We monitor beach monitoring program. And the update that I have is that the Napa Solano lab, which is our the lab that we use to send our samples for processing, they have increased the price. It's almost double. It's used to be $24 per sample. Right now, it's gonna be $53 per sample for us. And we have in the past sent couple of emails to the water board guys asking about how to move ahead in this direction, because the collaborators that we are working with, it's Golden Gate National Recreational Area people, and they have mentioned that the increase in the price for the lab sample processing, they are finding it really hard to get to pay for those sample processing by the lab. So that's something there where we need your help and your support to process the next steps.
Thank you, Artie. And we have a recommendation that I'm going to put forth to management shortly and hopefully we can resolve that soon.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Artie. Going down the list here, the next one would be Mendocino. Anyone from Mendocino on the call? Nope. Alrighty. Next one would be Monterey. I saw someone from Monterey. Nope. Most potentially not. Okay. Next one would be Orange County.
Well, this is Alan Marr with Orange County Environmental Health Water Quality Section. Take charge of the Ocean Water Program along with my supervisor here, Hisham Almashad, and my program manager as well as here, Lauren Robinson. Just quick updates on our postings, closures, and such for 2024. We had 157 postings total for that year. And closures, we had 3, one in February, July, and December, which equated to about 7.39 beach mile days. Total of rain advisory days, we had 67 rain advisory days, a lot of rain down here for all of us. Other than that, we had the Foxtrot Anchorage oil sheen, which did affect us back in March 2024. Other than that, no other updates.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Alan. Let's see. Next one would be San Diego.
Hello, everyone. I'm Romina Chess. I am the supervisor for the Beach and Bay Monitoring Program here in San Diego. Our update is pretty simple. We're moving along with the Tijuana River closures. A lot of agencies are very involved in different aspects of it. But in terms of non-South County beaches, we only had one closure since May of last year, which is wonderful, but we've also really haven't had any rain. And that's, I think, the only update we have.
Thanks, Romina. All right. Next one would be San Francisco. All right. Next one would be San Luis Obispo. Next one would be San Mateo. Righty. How about anyone from Santa Barbara on the call? Right. No. Let's see. Santa Cruz.
We have a raised hand, Beverly.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
sorry, it was
ma'am.
just taking me a second to get my mic off, so I wanted to raise my hand. My name's Jenny Munster. I'm the QA/QC chemist at the Environmental Laboratory with the City of Santa Cruz. Just wanted to introduce myself. I'm not with the County Health Department. I assumed someone from their lab would be here, but they're not, so I thought I'd say hi.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Let's see. So move down to Sonoma. I think Winnie, are you on the call?
Um, I am actually in the fiscal department, so I'm not sure where the environmental health department is, but I did join just so that I could understand a little bit more about the program.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. Let's see. All right, we'll move down to Ventura.
Hi, I'm Ashley Kennedy. I'm the manager for our ocean water quality program. And we also have Roxy Cabral here, who is our program specialist. The only update we have is we got our first rains of the season and thus our first failures for the season. So, but that's it for us.
Great, thank you for sharing. Before we move to the State Water Board and Cal EPA, I did see that East Bay Parks has joined, and you do have an update, it looks like.
Yes, this is Hal McLean, East Bay Parks. Yeah, we did have a red tide posting for a few months in like September, August, September into October at Crown Beach in the Bay, and at our Keller Beach site, 7 of the 9 single samples were postings were because of total coliforms, and we're still like hoping that we can potentially get total coliform off the off of our regulation here, because we've got eelgrass right outside, right adjacent to our beach. And eelgrass, we have information that eelgrass like contributes to total coliform, false positives, and this year over half of our geomeans exceeded, and so for most of our swim season, we were at a yellow light advisory because of total coliform and not enterococcus or anything else. And so that's I think that's probably going to ding us with beach watch and things like that, but we don't see the threat of a total coliform exceedance of greater than 24,000 when our enterococcus is basically a non-detect. And anyways, that's just a plug for that. But thanks for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing. We appreciate it. Let's see. So in case any of the agencies weren't able to join at the start of the call, I just wanted to quickly run through to see if Humboldt, Long Beach, let's see, we got Humboldt, Long Beach, Los Angeles. Oh yeah, I think they went. I guess any agencies that weren't on the call beforehand who didn't hear their name and they want to present any updates they have. I do see a hand up.
Hello, this is Holly Hall. I'm a water quality analyst with the California Coastal Commission. I work statewide, and I don't have any updates here today, but I'm interested in the presentations that we'll have, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you for sharing. Great to have you on the call. Let's see. So then we'll go to anyone from the State Water Board, Cal EPA, or the US EPA on the call who would like to share any updates.
I'll just introduce myself to start. I'm Kat Fike. I supervise the Ocean Standards Unit in the Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board, and the Coastal Beach Monitoring Workgroup is one of the programs our unit oversees. Thank you for joining today.
Let's see, and then any other organizations, agencies who would like to introduce themselves or provide any updates on beach water quality, or anyone that I may have missed who would like to introduce themselves.
Hi,
My name is Danielle Muller. I work for SCOOS, the Southern California Coastal Ocean Observing System. I'm their program coordinator. We have a program office at Scripps Oceanography. Water quality is one of our areas of focus. And I'm on the call today really to kind of just grab information, learn more about the working group, and then Elmog is on your agenda later on, and he's interfaced with us a couple of times. I think he may or may not talk about SCOOS, so I just wanted to be here for any questions or anything like that following his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kelly? Oh, sorry.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Tate. I'm the Water Quality Programs Manager for the Port of San Diego. And we've done a lot of work with the County of San Diego Department of Environmental Health on evaluating sources and the use of ddPCR at one of our embayment beaches. And so we're very interested in hearing John's presentation today and some of the other ones as well.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have another hand raised. John?
John Griffith. I run the microbiology department at Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, SQUIRP. I'm probably one of the only people that was an original member of the Beach Water Quality Workgroup, which used to meet at our place, which was started back in the 90s. So it's actually evolved to this.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. All right. So before we move to our first presenter, which is John, I wanted to cover a few informational items just as an update from the water board. Oh, it looks like we do have one more hand raised.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Naomi Maurice. I work for Gila Bay as a water quality data analyst. Just popping in to say hi and to learn a little bit more about the ddPCR testing. And also just wanted to give an update that we've also been testing some of the water in the LA area for things in addition to the traditional FIB. So we're also testing for heavy metals and some other sorts of things. So can send a list of our testing locations in the chat too if people are interested. But yep.
Yeah, no, I think that would definitely be interesting if you want to share it in the chat. 'Cause I know with all the fires going on in LA, that's a big point of interest at the moment. So thank you for sharing. All right, so a quick few informational items. So for all the agencies for invoicing for the grant agreements, if you need to submit your grant agreements from October to December, they are due, so we can get started on those. And for those of you who have submitted your invoices, thank you for doing so. We are currently working on those. The next invoice period for January through March will be due April 20th. And then just as a reminder for any questions for grant invoicing or beach monitoring to use our beach monitoring email address. For the 1-year grant agreements for San Diego and LA County, we are currently working on those draft agreements. And for the 3-year grant agreements, I know a few agencies have reached out about those. And those will be started in a few months of filling the vacancy in the Ocean Standards unit. So you should be hearing from the team on that over the next couple of months. For the Quality Assurance Program Plan development, so for Phase 3, we do have a draft of the Phase 3 Quality Assurance Program Plan, and we are hoping to have that complete by the end of the summer and to get that to the EPA for consideration of adoption and approved by the end of the year. For Phase 2, implementation has been slightly delayed, and we are hoping to update Beach Watch this summer, kind of dependent on our resources in IT. But we will also be working with some of the local agencies for when updates will be made, and some training may be available for those metadata requirements, just so that they are consistent with CDIN. And we may also have the agencies help review the Quality Assurance Program Plan to help ensure that the information that is included is accurate. For Phase 2, despite the fact that Beach Watch hasn't quite been updated with the new metadata requirements yet, we really appreciate the agencies collecting this metadata. That way, when the time comes, we can make those updates in the system. Let's see. I guess, Kat, did you have anything you wanted to add to the phases for the quality assurance program plan?
No, just that we'll keep everyone involved in the program updated as we start to work on our project to update the Beachwatch database, and we'll provide you with advance notice of when we expect those metadata requirements to roll out to the local agencies. And just keep saving that information in your own records for your program for now.
Great, thank you. So that is all the updates I had. So we're a couple minutes behind, so we'll just move to our first presenter, which is John Griffith, who is the department head of microbiology at the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project. And he'll be presenting on the adoption of ddPCR to monitor different bacterias at beaches in lieu of culture methods by San Diego County Department of Environmental Health. So John, take it away. Thank you for being a presenter today.
Let's see if we can get the screen to share here. All right, can you see my slides?
Looks great.
Okay. All right, so most of you have probably already heard some version of this presentation or have heard of the study that was done to prove digital PCR in San Diego. And so I thought, what can I do that that others haven't, that might bring some more context to how we got here and why we're using rapid tests. And so I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson to start with. So all of you should be familiar with this sign. This is one from Orange County, but most counties have some version of this, warning folks to stay out of the water because bacterial levels have exceeded the water quality standard. But actually, this is what the sign should say when we're using culture method. We took the sample yesterday. Maybe we analyzed it and got the answer out early, but more than likely, the sample got to the lab around noon because you have to run a route, and you can't send a sampler to every beach. And so the information, takes about 24 hours to get from incubation. And so that's kind of the end of the day, the next day, when that information is available and transmitted to the health officer, which means it's really the next morning before anyone that's actually using the beach is going to see a sign. And so, and that's not just a problem that has been recent. And so I'm going to go back to when Enterococcus was actually approved for use as a water quality indicator, and that was in 1986, and that was done through studies by Dufour and Cabelli in the Great Lakes mostly. But this was the rapid method of that time. Previously, most people were using multiple tube fermentation. And so essentially the same thing happened, except the samples got to the lab, and then it took 72 hours to get a result. And so there was a huge time lag before people were being notified. And so having a 24-hour method was a huge deal, right? But people still realized that wasn't fast enough. And so in 1999, the Beach Act actually required EPA to develop a rapid method. Many of you may know the Beach Act because that was the act that used to provide funding for beach monitoring to states. That was another part of it. But EPA was required to develop a rapid method, and they had 5 years to do that. And so at that same time, that's when AB 411 was passed in California that greatly expanded beach monitoring and really took the decision whether or not to post a sign out of the hands of the health officers in the counties, because previously it was discretionary, and force them to post a sign if water quality was exceeded. And so around 2000, the search for a rapid method began. That was not just at EPA, but that was also in California. The Water Board actually funded SQUIRP to do a national search and identify rapid methods. And we looked at all kinds of methods. Around that same time, there was a big concern about bioterrorism and folks using microbial agents. And so there were a whole lot of companies that had gotten defense money to develop rapid methods. So we had all kinds of different flavors of methods that were mostly designed to detect things from the air, trying to be adapted to measuring bacteria in the water. And what came out of it was qPCR was both identified by SQUIRP and EPA as the most viable method. And that then launched epidemiology studies. EPA did all its epidemiology studies in the essentially east of the Mississippi. And they considered doing one at Imperial Beach, and they came out and they're like, oh yeah, it has a lot of water quality problems, but the water quality problems tended to be in the winter. And so there weren't enough swimmers for them. And so when they came out to do a pilot, they said, nope, not a sure enough thing. And so they weren't going to do one in California. And so that's how SQUIRP got involved doing epidemiology studies here. So EPA's studies, the NEAR studies you may be familiar with, done in the Great Lakes, Puerto Rico, Gulf of Mexico, South Carolina, but nothing in California. And because California was concerned and the Water Board was concerned that these methods would be developed elsewhere, and we had no context for whether they worked at our cold water beaches in California, we were funded both by NIH and the Water Board to do epidemiology studies here in Southern California. And we did those at starting in Mission Bay, Avalon at Catalina Island, Doheny State Beach in Orange County, and Malibu at Surfrider over from 2003 to 2009. And both the EPA studies and the SQUIRP studies established that qPCR did in fact have a very strong health relationship with qPCR for Enterococcus, I should say, because there were other methods being measured too. Very strong health relationship with GI illness. And so then in 2012, EPA approved the qPCR method for Enterococcus. So that's kind of the history lesson. So how did San Diego end up using digital PCR? Well, in 2008, we'd already established pretty well that that qPCR could solve the time lag issue associated with growth-based methods, and had a good health relationship. In 2011, SQUIRP did a study where we actually gave the methods to local labs, relieved them of doing their culture-based monitoring by giving them lab assistants to do that, and the agencies that usually did that monitoring actually did qPCR in their lab, and we showed that we could actually get results by noon. And then EPA published their method, an approved method, but it was never adopted in California. And the main reason was, well, twofold. The first one is it's really labor intensive, not just to do qPCR, but to actually get the samples to the lab. And the second one is a lot of the water quality monitoring in California is done by dischargers, and the dischargers had to use the methods that were in their permit, and those methods were not qPCR. qPCR is still not approved for NIPD's permits, and so dischargers still have to use EPA 1600 or EnterAlert for Enterococcus. And they weren't going to do double duty. They just could not, right? But EPA took so long to actually approve a qPCR method that technology passed them up. And by 2014, what's really the next generation of quantitative PCR technology uses the same chemistry as qPCR, but measures the endpoint differently. That's a digital droplet PCR, was actually mature. It was being used in cancer research. And we were able to show that that we could get highly correlated results, R-squareds of 0.97 with EPA's qPCR method on the same samples, but it didn't have EPA or state approval. Very soon after, EPA in California opened the door to actually to the use of ddPCR and other rapid methods. EPA produced what's called a technical service memo, and what this does is it provides a pathway to approval of alternative measurement methods. And the way it does that is by establishing a correlative relationship with existing methods. And then at the same time, California passed Senate Bill 1395, which allows health departments to replace growth-based methods required under AB 411 with an EPA-approved rapid method for enterococcus for beach monitoring, which requires ELAP certification for the laboratory and some other steps as well. And so this led San Diego County to look at ddPCR as a method that they might be able to use in rapid rapid monitoring of their beach. And so here were their goals, and many of you probably already heard at this meeting and elsewhere about and Romina can talk about, if she wants to later, the issues with unidentified sewage coming across the border, either as a plume from a plant south of the border or from the Tijuana River. And so there's a real need to have a rapid method there to identify that right away, because it's not a matter of, oh, the bacteria is high and maybe it's sewage. It's the bacteria is high, we can smell sewage here, and how far does it go? How many people are getting exposed that don't know it, and we're not able to tell them in a timely manner. So the goals of their study were to identify a rapid method with same-day results. They wanted a single water quality indicator, rapid method throughout their whole coastline, and then implement that rapid method. And so here's, just for those of you who don't know what droplet digital PCR is, you can basically think about it as the IDEX of PCR. You take a water sample and when you're running IDEX, and you put it in the quantitray with the reagents, you incubate it, and then you count the wells, the positive and negative wells, and read them off an MPN table. That's actually uses Poisson statistics. That's the same thing that happens with droplet digital PCR. You catch the bacteria on a filter, you basically break them open with glass milling. They end up in a 25 microliter tube, and then that gets run, and it makes that sample into 20,000 droplets. And each of those droplets is its own individual PCR chamber. And so it basically counts the little water and oil droplets that light up, and also the negative ones. And then you're able to easily calculate the starting amount of those genes, those DNA targets from the bacteria you're looking for in those droplets, and calculate a result. And so there was already some precedent for using ddPCR here and comparing it to culture. So this is from our Surfer Health study in 2018. And you can see we got a reasonable correlation between EnterAlert and ddPCR. So what were the requirements for a site-specific alternative for culture methods for San Diego or any place else? Well, California requires an EPA-approved method. That's SB 1395, that's published by EPA, but EPA requires comparison with an approved method at sites with sufficient number of samples, that's from that technical service memo, a sufficient range of samples to cover variation, and a strong correlation with an approved method, either an index of agreement of greater than 0.7 or an R-squared of greater than 0.6. Okay, and San Diego County actually included the whole San Diego County coastline. There are 51 sampling locations. There were both wet and dry weather sampling, collected over 3,000 samples, and that took essentially 2 years with sampling at least weekly at all those beaches. And so here are the beaches, and you can see here are the North County beaches, and here are the South County beaches. The borders down here, Imperial Beach is right here, and these are the beaches that were most affected by sewage plume, although you'll see later that it can actually go farther than that. So the sample was analyzed for Enterococcus. Statistical comparison of not only EnteroAlert and ddPCR, but qPCR and ddPCR, because both qPCR and EnteroAlert are approved methods. And this was actually a very large study. SQUIRP was really only consulting on this. This was all done by the County of San Diego Environmental Health and Public Health Laboratories, and then by the California Department of Public Health and with Chad Crane's group. And so here's what the qPCR versus digital PCR results looked like. And you can see that it surpassed the requirement of the R-squared of 0.6 easily. And I can tell you that it also passed that for culture. And so here are the index of agreement for the culture-based methods. And the reason that the county was not just counting on the digital PCR versus qPCR is they wanted to be able to use the same health risk that was associated with the culture methods to extrapolate to health risk for their waters. And so it was important to know what the relationship was with EnteroAlert. And so then it came down to, so how do you choose this countywide threshold? And the idea is to look at statistical cut points here. And 3 criteria really. You want the highest percent agreement between the 2 methods, the lowest false positives, but maybe the most important, especially to public health folks, is the lowest false negative, right? Because it's one thing to once in a while put up a sign and be a little overprotective. It's a completely different thing if you're not putting up a sign when people are being exposed to pathogens. And so what that came out to was 13 gene copies per 100 mils. And this is very similar to the number that EPA came up with for its statistical threshold value for qPCR. So this actually makes a lot of sense. And so then one of the requirements was this gets published. So this was published in 2021. And just to give you an idea of the context, these studies are all the studies that were done doing method comparisons in California. And what you can see is this study was 3 times larger than any other study that had been done. And it was really the first to compare all 3 of those methods. Okay, so here's kind of how we got here. So I talked about this first part. And so what happened was in 2020, there was provisional acceptance of the study. In 2021, that journal publication. In 2021, it was also approved by EPA for use in San Diego County. And that's just a site-specific approval for all those beaches that were tested. And then in 2022 was the rollout. And there were some unintended consequences. Folks initially were very excited that there was going to be rapid testing and it was going to be more protective, but the increased sensitivity of the method actually led to an uptick in postings and closures. And this was right at the beginning of the tourist season, so a lot of businesses and politicians actually blamed the new method, but it really wasn't the new method. The health department, to their credit, did not back down because they knew there was sewage in the water. Could they have done more outreach and front loading? Yeah, they probably could, but they had no idea what was going to happen, which was that there was a south swell that coincided with the rollout and lasted, I believe, 6 weeks, and basically kept beaches posted or closed for that whole time. And so you can imagine why businesses and politicians felt blindsided. And actually didn't like the new method. And so why did the public health department not back down? Well, what you see here on the left, this is from Falk Feddersen and the folks at Scripps. And this is modeling of the sewage plume that comes up from the border in San Diego. So the sewage plant is here. Here is the US-Mexico border. The Tijuana River outfall is here. And during south swell events, what you see is this plume of sewage comes all the way up and wraps around all the way to Coronado. And this coincides, and so here's a less strong south swell. You still see it coming up, right? But it's really mostly only affecting Imperial Beach here. This coincides with work that we actually did looking at cross-border, and I should say this is what the discharge looks from that plant south of the border. So it just comes out across the beach. And it is literally the stream of death. I've been down there. There are all kinds of pelican bones and everything down there because it pretty much kills most things it comes in contact with. But so here are just some graphics. These are 3 different storms. This first grade area, this is we monitor all up the beach for the human fecal marker, HF183. Here's a sewage treatment plant, and this is just going up coast. And so then this is across the border, and now the Tijuana River mouth. So these are Imperial Beach, and you can see that it drops off with dilution. But when you get to the Tijuana River mouth, there's often a little bump up because it picks up some more things. We only went to Silver Strand. So this is actually Silver Strand here. And so basically this data ground truth the modeling that was done by Scripps. And so, yeah, there was sewage there in South County since the infrastructure got bombed out by storms, and it continues to be an issue until the infrastructure is repaired. It probably will continue to be. And so here's just another example of the exceedances during south swell. You can see during a south swell, you have no exceedance at 11 times, but 79 times you do, and no south swell, you can see the exceedances are much lower. And then Silver Strand, still the sewage plume is there during the south swell, but no south swell, it's much diminished. And up at Coronado, same thing. No exceedances, but you still have more when there's a south swell. And so this is kind of what came out in the press. There's still a lot of controversy around this. But we do know that from the EPA studies that when there is sewage, it turns out that these molecular methods, qPCR and digital PCR, are more protective than is culture. And getting an answer more quickly is paramount to protecting the public health. So what's next? City of Los Angeles is actually doing their own ddPCR study. If you remember, I said, I told you that they can't use it in their normal monitoring because it's not an approved method under their NIPD's permit. And so their intent is actually to use it for when there is a sewage spill to be able to close beaches as quickly as they can, and then to open up beaches as fast as they can after a spill when the spill is dissipated. And then the other news I can tell you is I've actually been participating in a panel with EPA. That was before the election, so I can't tell you what's going to happen now, but they're actually considering making their qPCR method for enterococcus an approved method for NIPD's permits, so that folks that monitor from sanitation districts and other dischargers could actually use them in lieu of the culture method and get a faster method. And then I guess the last thing I would say is these methods are great, but if you only monitor once a week, you're really wasting the effort. You might as well use a culture method because you're really going to have the same problem if you use this one sample to characterize your beach for the whole week. Okay. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions if there's any time.
So we have a hand raised. Kelly, do you have a question? You might be on mute.
I am so sorry, rookie mistake. So thanks, John. Great presentation. As I mentioned earlier, the port's been working very closely with our Department of Environmental Health on some of the rollouts with the DDPCR. And I think this stakeholder group is a really important group to kind of just share a quick 30-second view of one of the agencies that's utilizing this. And so up front, I want to say the port supports the rapid turnaround that DDPCR offers, and we are so excited that there is the ability for swimmers to know sooner about the water quality, because like John showed, we agree, the sign should say, oops, you shouldn't have swam yesterday, right? And so at Tidelands Park in San Diego Bay, which is an embayment beach, it's not influenced by the TJ sewage. We are one of the beaches that noticed the big uptick in postings since the switch over to DDPCR. And we're also one of the beaches that had a requirement under a regulatory permit to continue to sample traditional culture methods as well. And so as a result, we've got a great split sample data set. And, we're just monitoring, doing source investigations when we saw these postings until the public got involved, and the public started hammering us, asking us what's wrong, what's going on at this beach, why all of a sudden is it so impacted? And so as a result of that, we started working really closely with Romina and her crew at DEH. They're wonderful. And we started doing a ton of different source investigations. We did some molecular work to look at speciation. We've done HF183. We've continued on the DDPCR, DDPCR and traditional method split samples. We also looked at our moorings as a potential source and ruled that out. And we actually found that sampling methodology in the field, so really consistent sampling protocols, seem to have quieted the disagreement a lot in what we were seeing with the data more recently. But we did also do some method agreement work that suggested there wasn't as tight as agreement as there may be in the open coast. And, our site is marked by fine silty sediment, eelgrass beds, really quiet tides for the most part. And so, those are all things that are good for the conversation. And like I said, we've been working with Romina and her crew, and it's been great. And really tightening up the field sampling has seemed to alleviate some of those issues, at least for the time being. And we're kind of thrilled to see if that continues moving forward. That's all I got. If anyone's interested in hearing more, please reach out to me. We'd be happy to talk a little bit more about the work that we've done too.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have another hand raised. Keith Allen.
Hi, good morning. Keith Allen, Long Beach Environmental Health. Thank you, John, for the presentation. I do have one question I guess something you mentioned. You said City of Los Angeles is doing some of the rapid testing and that they would close their beaches based on a sewage spill. I guess that's more of a LA County EH question, maybe for Ashley. Does City of LA have authority to close beaches on your health officer's behalf And then a second question I have for San Diego County, because I remember seeing them present on this a year or so ago. They had mentioned that there was an uptick in staff and lab costs and staff overtime costs because of the implementation of the rapid test. So if both agencies might be able to answer my questions, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
John, I'll let you answer first about LA County. I don't know.
But for LA County, we're working with the health department. It's not, the city can't make any determination. So we're actually assisting the city of LA with that. But the health department is involved.
I can speak to the cost for San Diego County. So the cost of the DDPCR lab testing did increase from culture. It's a more intensive method, so it took more time on our lab side to do it. Some of those costs came down our second year as they became more efficient and they redid their lab fees. Those costs came down the second year, but they were still higher than just processing culture. And we operate 7 days a week, so we didn't have overtime for staff necessarily, but we did really have to shift our staffing model. And so I want to clarify, we kind of run two programs in San Diego County, all under beach safety. We have the AB 411, where we're following the specifications for those sites on what those required sampling is. And then we have our South County Enhanced program, which is a board-directed program for daily monitoring of Beach Bay in our South County, which is impacted by the sewage. So we're there every single day testing with DDPCR because our conditions and impacts from the sewage are changing daily down there. And so as we implement the DDPCR, that's really where we needed to make our shifts and change in staffing because we wanted to get the samples to the lab sooner to allow them more time to process. And so we really need to have those back to the lab at the latest by 9 a.m. And so sometimes we're sending two people in two different directions versus one person that could slowly go up a coast to be able to have everything back. So just a shift in how we did our staffing. Let me know if that answered it for you, Keith.
Yeah, no, that was good. I think that answer was a little bit different than a couple years ago, and you guys probably had shifted your staffing capacities. So your lab is 7 days a week, your EH team is 7 days a week now.
Yes.
But what about resamples? Are you guys doing same day resamples on advisory? So you get your results back by noon or whatever it is. If you're dropping off by 9, it's probably what, 2 in the afternoon or something. Are you doing a same day resample, and then are you having to stretch out later into the day to post on an advisory or remove advisories? Would that make overtime happen?
So no, on the same day resamples, like we're going out the next day in the morning. So that's a no. Sometimes our results come in later, like in the winter time right now. It could be dark when those results come in. So maybe signs are pulled in the morning, or we're working with lifeguards to help us do that. So not typically utilizing overtime there.
Thank you, Heather.
So Keith, for LA County, your questions for now, who has authority to close the beach? LA City does not have authority to close the beach, but when we do close the beach, LA City goes out and takes samples, and just for FYI, but we use our lab to determine the beach closure and opening.
Thanks, Ash.
Alrighty. We did get one question in the chat. I think it's just more for John, if you would mind sharing the slides with the group today, and then also that study that you showed from 2021, the research paper that was published. If you could share that link as well, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you. Looks like we have another question. raised hand. Rashawn? Might be on mute. Oh, there we go.
Hi there. Hi, John. Nice to see you. Good to see you. So I was just wondering if there are plans to reevaluate the method agreement now that it's been a couple years.
Plans to evaluate the method agreement in San Diego?
Yes.
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, Heather could speak to that, but that's probably a multi-million-dollar undertaking.
Okay. Yeah, it was just because it was adopted as a pilot and through the site-specific objective criteria. So I was wondering if there were
Well,
any
not really a pilot. It's not a pilot. It's actually adopted, but only for it can only be the way that works is it can only be used at those beaches where it was tested side by side and shown to have a correlative relationship with an approved method. That's how the technical service memo is written.
Okay, thanks. And
And
I just read
I'll
that
just add a little bit more for San Diego. At this time, we're not reconsidering, revisiting that, but it's an active conversation. I know we have a lot of our cities here on the call, and so it's been an active conversation in our communities. There is a very large expense to that. And so when we've had some consultation with CDPH and our health officer, CDPH had really advised at the time that if it's not, it would need to be reevaluated if it wasn't protective of public health. And so we do find that it is protective of public health. But with that said, closely monitoring the research that's going on in LA, Santa Barbara as well, and some other jurisdictions who are currently evaluating it. I know Kelly, after we had that meeting with the port, we were sharing some of like the differences in the Bay with Santa Barbara so they could start incorporating information into what they're looking at, right? So there's so much good research going on. We want to learn from that and continue that conversation to see what we can learn. And knowing, I think, in the future, all things are revisited. And we have learned and grown a lot in our understanding and implementation of the program in the last 3 years. So I do think it will happen at some time. The time is not right now, but it's a very active conversation in San Diego County.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I just, the journal article did say that it would benefit from some further validation. So that's really what I was curious about. So thank you.
And it's great that with SCORP, we have so many others getting DDPCR equipment and learning to use it and having more folks, coming on board and bringing more data. That's really going to help things as well.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And thanks, John, for the presentation and for sharing a lot of great info today. In the interest of time, we're going to move to our next presenter. But if anyone has any questions for John, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions. His contact information is in the agenda. All right. So thank you very much, John. So we're going to move to our next presenter, which is, oh, sorry, was there a question? No, good. Okay. Cool. So our next presenter is Jamie Smith, who's a senior scientist with the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, and they'll be presenting on the monitoring efforts and recreational use impacts from harmful algal blooms on marine coastal water quality. So Jamie, if you are on, feel free to share your screen. Yeah.
All right, let's see, get that up. How does that look? Is that in presenter mode?
Nope, we can see your presentation. Looks good.
Okay, perfect. Great. Yeah, so thank you for that introduction. So I'm here today to talk to you a bit about harmful algal blooms and how they impact some of the recreational uses on our coastal beaches. And some of the monitoring efforts that are in place. So I know that this group doesn't necessarily talk about HABs or harmful algal blooms all that much. So just a quick kind of background on harmful algal blooms. We like to say in the field it's kind of when algae go bad, because algae are natural parts of the aquatic ecosystem, and in 9 times out of 10 they're a necessary and important member of the aquatic community that support the food web. But when we have a harmful algal bloom, it's kind of when a specific species kind of get out of control. And an older term, and a term that gets kind of thrown around sometimes here in California when we have dinoflagellate blooms, is red tide. That's kind of an older term because you can see here in this photo that this is in Florida. That's kind of where some of the science really originated. Their particular issue created kind of red, discolored water, but harmful algal blooms actually occur across all aquatic systems. They can occur in freshwater, estuaries, and in coastal systems. And they also are not always red. So in here we have some pictures of a harmful algal bloom in a lake that discolors the water, dark green, like a paint spill. But we can also have harmful algal blooms that don't discolor the water at all, but can still cause some major ecosystem impacts. And so the impacts from harmful algal blooms are pretty broad. So the most obvious and kind of biggest concern is around the toxins that some of these algae will produce. And so the toxins can have major negative effects on wildlife, drinking water. They can cause recreational contact and ingestion issues, as well as in freshwater systems, the toxins in the water can be transferred into plants and things like that if that water is used for agricultural irrigation. Um, the biomass of the bloom itself, when it's a really high biomass, so when you are seeing that discoloration, can also cause fish kills and other negative effects. Some of the algae also produce really interesting compounds that specifically interact with the gills of fish and cause them to be less effective at getting oxygen from the water. Um, there's obviously aesthetic issues, and there can be taste and odor compound issues as well. So the algae will make lots of different interesting and disruptive compounds when it comes to harmful algal bloom species. And so to just like zoom out and look at the United States, we have a diverse array of harmful algal bloom issues, and like I mentioned, HABs are kind of nationally and globally distributed. They occur in a variety of ecosystems, and there's a number of different harmful species. And so the monitoring and the impacts are not like a one size fits all, because it really depends on the types of species and the system that you're talking about. And then on top of that, the different toxins and metabolites that the algae can make have a variety of modes of action. So you have neurotoxins, toxins that impact the liver, things that are tumor promoting compounds, and skin irritants. But when it comes to California, we have a number of issues. The three that I have here are some of our most common toxin producers that form blooms. And then not shown here are some of the things that we've been seeing in recent years, particularly in Southern California, that have been causing what have been called the red tides, Southern California red tide. But historically in California, our biggest issue has been with domoic acid producing blooms of Pseudonutzia. And so I'll focus a bit more around that, just because there's a lot of the monitoring is centered really around Pseudonutzia monitoring and monitoring for domoic acid. But I will just caveat that a lot of the public health monitoring also will consider saxitoxin, which is an issue along our coast, as well as oxalic acid, because those pose a pretty significant health risk if consumed. So the human health syndromes that are associated with harmful algal blooms are usually called a shellfish poisoning syndrome, because the primary route of exposure is shellfish, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the one associated with domoic acid is called amnesic shellfish poisoning, because domoic acid is a neurotoxin. The symptoms when you are exposed kind of range from a lot of neurological confusion, disorientation, amnesia, to some gastrointestinal issues like nausea, vomiting, cramps. And in some extreme cases, there are documentations of human death after exposure, and then thousands of wildlife deaths associated with exposure to to donoic acid. So as I mentioned, when it comes to recreation in the marine for marine harmful algal blooms, consumption is our primary concern. It's a little different on the freshwater side. You have issues of contact. Some of the toxins that are made in freshwater, you can have contact issues. But on the marine side, I get this question a lot when a bloom is occurring, is it safe to go into the water? And typically the toxin levels are not at such a high level that they are causing, skin or contact, or like if you drink the water, it's not, unless you drink like gallons of seawater, you're going to be, you're not going to have like drinking water exposure issues. The main issue is with consumption. And as I mentioned, algae are, or phytoplankton are really the base of the marine food web. And so when you have blooms of things like I'm showing Pseudonytzia here, in the left-hand corner, you have your primary and your secondary consumers. They're indiscriminately, or some shellfish can have selective feeding, but they're generally eating these organisms and biomagnifying and bioaccumulating the toxin. And then the concern then is from a recreational and subsistence harvesting standpoint for fish and shellfish, that's going to be a big exposure potential. And so there are federal safe to eat biotoxin thresholds for many of the marine algal species. So domoic acid, which we're going to talk about mostly today, but also the saxitoxin, oxalic acid. There's federally issued Food and Drug Administration biotoxin thresholds that kind of will guide the public health monitoring, which again, we'll talk about how that program works in a moment. But there's ways kind of around and to protect public health of humans when these events occur. Unfortunately, on the marine wildlife side, they're not so lucky. Seals, sea lions, otters, and birds can't just stop eating until the bloom is over and the toxins have depurated out of the food web. And so that's why we typically see, particularly for domoic acid blooms, when those events occur, we're seeing, illnesses of marine mammals and birds. When you think sea lions are kind of the poster child for this, and we see, large increases in sea lion strandings. And when you think about it, they're eating between, 15 and 40 pounds of fish a day to maintain homeostasis. So they're getting a pretty good, even if there's a relatively small bloom, and toxin levels are relatively low. Here on the West Coast, we do have some of the highest toxin levels in the environment kind of globally. But even in kind of these lower toxin scenarios, you can still see impacts on the sea lions because they have to eat so much. And so the domoic acid exposure through the food web is really linked to illness in mammals. And so it's really common that the sea lions, again, those are the ones that you'll see the most commonly. They strand, and they interact with the public. They will kind of have an array of kind of unusual symptoms. They will have kind of unusual head movements, foaming at the mouth. They can be having seizures and they're really confused. So sometimes you get these stories of a domoic acid intoxicated sea lion ending up on PCH or in somebody's patio or something weird. They're really disoriented. Because it's a neurotoxin. They also do kind of unusual scratching behavior. And I think what we've seen in recent years is sometimes they're really aggressive. So they will be on the beach and people kind of are like, oh, look at the sea lion. And then the sea lion is confused and will react kind of really aggressively. And so this has kind of been happening enough that there's these really distinctive behavioral markers that when they're seen by kind of the rescue groups, they know okay, that is a domoic acid impacted sea lion, and usually, you get one or two, and then it kind of is, oh, the floodgates open, and there's dozens and dozens for kind of the duration of the bloom, right? And so, like, I've been using this word stranding. This is kind of, what this can look like on the beach. Is the sea lion kind of just ends up on the beach, and it might lay there. It's kind of in the water, and obviously something like this will draw a lot of public attention, particularly if the timing of the bloom the last couple years, the timing of some of the bloom events has been a bit unusual. Historically, they were more common, particularly in Southern California, to be a early spring time thing, and now they're happening. They've happened more in the May through July, so there's a lot more recreation on the beach. So there's a lot more kind of opportunities for interaction with the public. But this is kind of a major impact on recreation, and again, with the animals being a bit more aggressive, it's really kind of a wildlife issue, but also there's the potential for harm to the public. And I think these events gain a lot of public attention. So I just pulled some headlines from the really large event that happened in 2013 or 2023 rather, where there were, over 1,000 marine mammals that stranded in about a 6 to 8 week period. So sea lions and dolphins primarily. And so it was very upsetting to the public, and there was actually even an LA City Council special meeting where they kind of wanted to develop a stronger kind of response plan to when these events occur. So these can be very disruptive. When it comes to monitoring, however, there are a variety of monitoring systems in place. Um, there's shellfish biotoxin monitoring. There's the Marine Mammal Stranding Network that kind of helps to address the stranding issue that I just mentioned. There's also water monitoring programs that are centered around kind of capturing trying to do early detection of the bloom when we see increases in the causative organisms in the water, and maybe even understanding causality. And we're moving into the ability to try to forecast when these events might occur. And so from a shellfish monitoring perspective, there's a long-running California Department of Public Health works in collaboration with Fish and Wildlife and OEHA, and there's a long-running kind of shellfish safety biotoxin monitoring program that occurs. So this is a paper that I published a couple years ago where we looked at some of that data in a kind of a retrospective way for Southern California. So you can see that there's a lot of monitoring that happens. It does actually happen all the way up and down the coast. I'm just showing Southern California here. But there's shellfish samples that are taken on a routine basis. And then you can see on the left-hand side here, I'm showing Southern California broken up into two segments because we do see variation in kind of your maximal toxin levels. So kind of more in the northern part of the Southern California bight, we tend to see pretty extreme levels of toxins in the systemic acid in shellfish, and you can get a number of closures. This dashed line here is the FDA safe to eat levels. So observations of the Hab toxin, in this case, domoic acid, above those levels kind of results in a closure of either the recreational or the commercial shellfish facility. And then we see, fortunately, in the southern part of Southern California, we do see much fewer exceedances of that line over this 15-year period that we looked at. And like I said, this is monitoring that occurs on a routine basis. This program has been running since the 90s, and it happens up and down the coast. And then from the marine mammal, marine wildlife perspective, there's the California Marine Mammal Stranding Network. And so this is run through NOAA, and this is a cooperative network of rehabilitation and rescue facilities that respond to all strandings, not just HABs, but they are kind of when a harmful algal bloom that impacts the marine mammal populations in the way that I was kind of just showing happens. These are the folks that are kind of on the first line. They all have phone numbers that people can call, and if they see marine mammal on the beach, they can call and let folks let depending on where they are. So, like for example, Orange County is covered by Pacific Marine Mammal Center. You call that phone number, and a group of a team from that center will come down and assess the mammal and then bring it into the center for if it's a live animal, they usually bring it into the rehabilitation center if they can, and we'll give it medical treatment and try to rehabilitate and re-release. Sometimes the animals are sick enough or they have some issue where they can't be released, so they'll be sent into like a zoo or aquarium in a managed care scenario. They also try to respond to dead animals and gain information on, what the animal was and the species and kind of age demographics to kind of keep track of the strandings along the California coastline. And like I said, they are doing a lot of the frontline work on with these events to kind of they have signs and information on staying away from the animals when the blooms occur, but they are a good resource if there's ever like a marine mammal that has stranded on the beach. And then from a water monitoring perspective, there's a program, a collaborative program that's been in place since 2008 that's called the California Harmful Algal Bloom Monitoring and Alert Program, or HABMAP for short. And so this is a weekly HAB monitoring program where samples are collected from piers up and down the California coast. So I'm just showing that map on the right-hand side here. And they collect weekly water samples. It's a program that's largely focused on domoic acid because, like I said, that's the most prevalent marine HAB issue here on the California coastline, that has been. And so there's measurements of domoic acid, the archive filters for the other HAB toxins that we can look into if those are harder to measure. So we'll measure those if we have reason to, based on the cell abundances that are collected. There's also kind of basic water quality like chlorophyll, nutrients, and temperature, kind of aimed at better understanding the causes and developing an understanding of bloom ecology. And so this program is long running enough that the data from these sites, which I have the website pointer down there, that data is all publicly available and downloadable through that website. And there's a number, 20 plus kind of publications from this program that has given insights into the bloom, typical bloom timing and magnitude, and even some insights on the causes of the blooms. And then as far as monitoring resources, there's a weekly and monthly data product in addition to the data just when it's fully QA/QC'd, it goes on the website. But there's a weekly email listserv that if you're interested, shoot me an email and I can get you connected with that. Where the monitoring locations will just send out a short email with a short update of what they observed at like kind of a high qualitative level. It's helpful to kind of keep track of that. So it's a very informal update. And then there's a more synthesized monthly data product that is it was called the California HAB Bulletin. Lagged behind a couple months, but it'll synthesize all of the information on HABs kind of together and give a picture of kind of the status of HABs for a given month. And some exciting kind of new technology that is being implemented at many of these sites is we're piloting a imaging flow cytobot network. And that is basically to try to detect events earlier. Like we have weekly sampling, but often phytoplankton blooms can develop on the order of days. So you might go to the pier on the Monday the previous week and you don't really see anything, and you go there the following Monday, 7 days later, and there's a full-blown harmful algal bloom. And so what these imaging flow cytobots are, IFCB for short, are essentially an underwater robot that is telemetered, and it takes water samples every 25 minutes and takes images of the phytoplankton in that sample and sends it into the cloud. And so right now, scientists can go and look at the images, and we're working on an automated classifier that uses AI to do image recognition, essentially issue kind of warnings when you start to see an uptick in any of the harmful species of concern. And then lastly, we have the development of predictive models and tools. One of the operational products is called the California Harmful Algal Bloom Risk Mapping, or CHARM product. And so I'm just showing an animation here, which I think Clarissa Anderson, who shared this animation, and she's kind of the brains behind the development of this product. But this is an animation of the progression of the bloom that happened in 2023 that was associated with the 1,000+ sea lions and dolphins that stranded. But essentially, the warmer colors are areas with higher probabilities of domoic acid presence above 0.5 micrograms per liter, which is we're trying to dial in, what water levels are most associated with risk of wildlife impacts. Right now, that's kind of the one that we think might be a good one. And then the cooler colors are lower probability. So it kind of gives a 3-day forecast of where in the coast we think harmful algal bloom toxins or domoic acid is going to be highest along the coast. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions on this topic, and I'm happy to share slides if anybody wants the presentation, because I tried to put all the program websites and everything to have that available for you all. But thanks for the opportunity to share today.
Great. Well, thank you, Jamie. Wonderful presentation. And yeah, I think it would be great if you could share your slides, just because I saw that there were a few links in there. And I know you also mentioned a paper that you published a couple of years ago. So if you would like to share that as well, I think that'd be very interesting.
Happy to.
So thank you. Yeah. And then were there any questions from anyone on the call? Great. Well, thank you so much. And if anyone does have any questions, oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. If anyone has any questions for Jamie, her email is also in the agenda. So if anyone would like to reach out to her. And with that, I think we'll do a break until 10:35 a.m. And then when we come back, we'll go to our final presenter for the day, and then wrap up with any updates and questions from the State Water Board. So with that, we'll start the break. And if everyone could be back by 10:35, that would be great. Thank you. So our next presenter is Almog Goldstein, who's the co-founder and CEO of Beaches app. And Almog, if you're on, feel free to share your screen. And yeah, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. I see that a lot of people have their videos kind of like turned off. So if you want to turn it on and kind of like also I'll be able to see your faces, that'll be very helpful. But yeah, whatever works for you. Let me share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see it.
See, yep.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. My name is Almog. I'm going to tell you a little bit of story behind our app, and then a little bit about the application itself. If you have any questions, we also have the section after, but also feel free to just open the mic and ask anything. Cool. So a couple of decades ago, my parents met on the beach, and they named me Coral, Almog, which is coral in Hebrew, to express the love of the place that started the family. And when I asked them about their beach experience, they told me that basically when they wanted to look for the best beaches around, they had to use kind of like a beach guide to kind of like know where to go or what are the attractions. they have like a flag to basically understand what are the conditions, and if like they're allowed to go to swim or not. And if they wanted to rent a chair, they had to pay with cash. And if they wanted to get more information, they had to call to kind of like a phone line and hear a recording to understand what are kind of like the regulations from the lifeguard. And if they wanted to know more about kind of like extreme conditions, they had to kind of like drive all the way, and then sometimes just to find out that it's impossible to go because there are some like red tide conditions or something like that. And also, if they wanted to learn more about the regulations, they had to just read the sign, because every beach and every city and every county has like a different regulation. And then I kind of like try to recall what's today's experience, and we've seen all of that in black and white. Today we also kind of like, when we go on I don't know, like on like a road trip or something, we use tour guides to understand where to go. We still have flags, which is like the best way to understand, like all the way I'm driving all the way to know what are the conditions. If I want to rent an equipment, I'm still paying with cash in some places. Some places also have the phone line. And also some places still have the signs as the way for the city to communicate the extreme conditions. And most of the places still uses the signs as like the main way to communicate what are the regulations with visitors. So kind of like trying to understand that most of the beach information is decentralized. We kind of like understood that problem. And when we talked with people, we just went to the beach and asked people like, hey, what are the challenges? Even lifeguards from different places told us like visitors are clueless. They have no idea because information is all around. And you have weather reports, amenities, rentals, rules, warning, extreme conditions, like so many different information categories. It's basically impossible to track all of them. Now, I've had like 2 road trips in the US. I visited 30 states, and I found myself kind of like having tons of like apps and tabs to just figure out what are the conditions and where should I go. Um, and when I kind of like try to understand what's kind of like the market in terms of apps and offerings, I found out there is like some apps are focusing on the beach data, some apps are focusing on the ocean data, but what about like having both of them? This is what we need for like a complete beach experience. And then I couldn't find anything like this. And like I thought there is like must be a better way to do this. So we try to understand, okay, like what are the different categories and how we can basically create one experience that takes all the different types of information into one single experience. When you go to the beach, you don't think about the different things. You just want to like know, should I go there or not? So I'm very fortunate to work with incredible people who are my friends, and we incorporated a company with the most creative name and the most creative name for an app, Beaches App and Beaches App Inc. And basically, we built this app that gives information about the amenities, the rules, the weather, water quality. We have this supporting for most of the coastal states in the US. We also featuring businesses. We're showing forecasts. So we kind of like integrated many information sources into one single experience that helps beachgoers, both visitors and locals, to know what's the best time to go, where should they go, and where should they come back. And something that we noticed is that every city, every county, every state, every country has a different way of saving this database. Some of them have like an open portal, some of them have like a person that holds like a spreadsheet. And we reached out to a lot of people, and we're very fortunate again for the people who gave us this public information. And then we had to kind of like manually customize it to make sure that it all fits, because the end user who goes to the beach, they don't think about this, obviously. And we launched this, and we kind of like posted it on Facebook groups to hear what people think. We like to hear feedback. And from the feedback, we found something specifically interesting. Here I'm talking about feedback in Florida about red tide. No, I haven't heard about red tide before. So I was like, what's that? Let's learn more about it. And I found out that this is actually could be really toxic and could be really dangerous. And most of the people, they specifically visitors who are out of the state in Florida, they have no idea what's red tide. Usually what happens is that they go and they figure out that there's like red tide, and like this is a bummer and I'll have to go back. And we try to understand, okay, like what are the existing ways for people to understand how that works. So we found this, which is kind of like basically like a PowerPoint slide that is being uploaded and being updated. Not very accessible, but still this is an information. And we said, how can we actually help beachgoers to understand? Should we create this information internally? Should we tap to external knowledge? Should we crowdsource this information? Like there are so many ways to get this information, but we read about the government's effort, which already, you know, it's like tremendous, and so many great people investing a lot of money in this, and they know red tide way better than we'll ever know, right? This is not our expertise. And why should we why should we focus on this where we know how to create an app, we know how to create products, we don't know how to do this, right? There are like a lot of people with PhDs, super smart, that's not our expertise. So we decided to leverage external expertise and focus on what we do best as kind of like as an attitude for what we do. So reached out to NOAA, just like a nice email, and we said like, hey, is there like an API that we can reach out and you know, like get information about red tide? And they reached back. They said that they received the email, and they said that we'll reach back in the future once we have it. And they actually did. They remembered us a couple of months later, and then they released an API that is public. And within 3 weeks, that was like on the store on our app. We released it production, and we just took this information, incorporated it into this app, into our app, and now basically everyone in Florida can know if there are red tide conditions or not. And if they tap on this banner, we take them to the NOAA website so they can learn more about this phenomenon. What is red tide? Most of the people, like, they don't know what's behind it. So we show this information, and then something interesting is that we can incorporate this information in the future to show forecast and even like to proactively send notifications to the locals and visitors. So when you like passing nearby a place that has red tide, you don't have even to check the app. You just get a notification from our app says like, hey, there is red tide. You shouldn't go there. And the government featured this collaboration on their website. And again, the part here is that it's like a public information, so anyone can leverage this information, right? And we're just one of the organizations who are luckily decided to incorporate this information and help. And something that is super interesting that happened here is that we went back to the Facebook groups for the people who asked about red tide, and we told them like, hey, you remember you asked about red tide? So now we have it. What do you think? And people told us, you know, like saying very low is going to cause like unnecessary panic, right? Because like we're showing here, like we have a couple of values. The minimal one is very low. That's what we have from the government. And people said like that's, you know, like very low is not none, right? So it's like, what's going on here? And then they actually like NOAA actually gave us a response and explained how we should deal with this, and then how we should explain it, or how we should kind of like incorporate the way that we present the data on our app. And for the very first time, we created like a feedback loop. So the people from NOAA who are working on this got direct communication with people from Facebook groups in Florida about their work, about how that works, right? Before that, that was like a spreadsheet. And now they have access from you know, from our app. We're just in the middle, but we're creating this feedback loop and their ability to actually know how people perceive this information. And again, we're very fortunate that we have like incredible experts who understand this way better than we'll ever know, and they explain how this thing is working, and then we can communicate this to the public, right? So first of all, I'm not sure if they're here or not, but we want to thank the team that helped us. But also what we realized here is that we're amplifying the government efforts, and we're helping beachgoers, both tourists and visitors, by just, you know, like taking existing knowledge, existing resources, and giving it to the public, right? And by the way, we're doing this 100% for free. With this information that comes from the government will never be behind any paywall, because this is free information, and this is how it will forever stay to the public. This is what we believe. And then we had specifically in California, many people talking about water quality, right? Water quality information. So again, same method. We try to understand what are the existing databases that we can tap into. We found the Safe to Swim, and we reached out, and the team from who actually arranged this call really helped us to understand how to deal with that and how to perceive the information to translate it into our app. So also, thanks so much for the team and everything that you're doing. Incredible work, and really appreciate it. And it helps us to really understand how to incorporate this information. And basically what we have right now is that for every data point that we'll receive from this API will show on, just like on the app, if the water quality is poor or it's good. And if it's poor, we tell people it's better to avoid this area, right? So it's like, again, the better input and the better information we have, the better just beach experience for everyone. And again, specifically, we're talking here about for tourists who are not familiar with how things are working, and most chances that they won't go to the website to read about the news and like their beach closures. This is not how it works usually, right? And I'm sure we can all think about this as like we're tourists in another place. We're not reading the local news usually. So we're trying here to really create like an experience that takes the information from the experts and just amplify it. And I want to here specifically talk about the recent visit that we've had to San Diego. We talked with businesses. Here's like the T-shirt that I'm wearing. That's like from Mitch's surf shop, which I'm sure here it's also signed. And we talked with lifeguards, and we talked with academia. And here specifically, we talked with schools, which I know Daniel is on the call as well. And we've met with them, and incredible people who do incredible stuff. Again, the experts. I'm like years ahead in terms of like what we'll ever know about this. And they have so many projects and so many data points that we thought it would be incredible to incorporate. But then we also ask ourselves, like, what are the challenges of open data? We try to understand like what their challenges, and in general, like for the like academia. And for governmental organizations, usually what happens when you have open data is that a lot of organizations will take this data and they will incorporate it into their own products, but they won't give back, right? They will take this information, but then the feedback or anything that they learn from how they implemented the information usually stays internally, maybe because they don't see the importance of giving information back or just delivering. If they have issues, of course, they will expect that you'll be available 24/7 for any questions. But if they have something that they learn from this information, not sure how about that will work. And we actually, during that call with schools, came up with an idea that we think could actually be duplicated to so many places, again, both academia and the government, where whenever we actually incorporate any type of data that is public from schools, we'll actually document the entire implementation and everything that we learn, and we'll add feedback mechanisms to the app. So for example, Red Tide, we can ask people, hey, do you see red tide when you go to the beach? And then just like thumbs up, thumbs down. For us, it's like very easy to show this, but then we can take this information and give it back to help them validate and like train the data and learn from what the consumers are, like how they perceive it, right? And we came up with the idea that actually I'm personally could be affiliated with SCUS, and then I'll write reports as the CEO of the company. I'll write reports about everything I learned from the implementation and from the data. And these reports will be the property of SCUS and and UC San Diego. So we give back all the IP of like the learnings, and we take the public data that they have. So that way, we're not just like creating feedback loop and just like, just like sending emails and stuff. We're creating like real detailed reports about everything we learn from the experience of their data and how consumers are perceiving their data to help them. And by doing so, what happens is that we get the validated data, we provide more value to consumers and beachgoers, we get more feedback, we provide better output, and then we give that output back to SCUS so they can increase the like the accuracy of the information that they have. And when we think like big picture with that attitude, we actually can create a much better experience for everyone, because that's a win-win, right? So it's not here just to take. By giving back, we're actually also winning better value and better information, and that will basically win more people who are using the app, getting more value and enjoying and getting a better beach experience. So again, we're leveraging external expertise. We focus on what we do best. That's not what we do best in terms of like creating red tide information and doing that, and just kind of like reflecting on the visit to San Diego. And we talked again with nonprofits and with businesses and with lifeguards and with beachgoers and with the academia. We're thinking that something that could be very interesting here is just by being in the middle, we can actually orchestrate a beach ecosystem that helps all the different actors in the ecosystem. So for example, here we're talking with the academia, we're taking this information, we're bringing it back to the visitors, we're getting their feedback, and then we're giving it back to academia. Or for example, nonprofits, we can use the user base that we have to actually offer them to join beach cleanups, right? So again, better for the ecosystem. We talked with surf shops. Some of them told us that business is not very easy these days. So by having, again, a lot of value, obviously we get people to use our platform. We can expose businesses and give them a platform that they don't have to know how to do marketing on TikTok or on Instagram. 100% of the people who use our app go to the beach, right? So this is like their direct consumers. It makes it very easy for them to just use this marketplace. So basically, kind of like my ask here is that if you can help us to help beachgoers by partnering with us, by telling us about the data that you have that you think we can incorporate. Craziest ideas, the better. We like to think, like long term, and we like to think, like big. So again, we're very much open to any crazy ideas. We like to make sure that we amplify the efforts. Like I'm sure, like there are incredible people here on the call in doing incredible stuff, but the consumers, the people, the beachgoers, most of them, they don't know about the work that you do. They don't know you, but we have the platform to expose and put the people who do the work in the front and give them the credit, not just for the credit, but also, again, for the people to know where the data is coming from and why this is so important for them to understand what's rate tide and why they should care about it. So long story short, this is what we do. Thank you so much for helping us. You can scan this QR code if you want to learn more about that. That's my email. Feel free to reach out. Again, craziest ideas, the better. And thank you so much for the time. Yeah, I'm here for any questions.
Great, thank you, Almog. Very cool presentation, and we did get a question in the chat. Someone asked, but maybe with the QR code, it might be more helpful. But they said they can't find the Beaches app through Android, and they're wondering if it was available through Android.
Sure. So we're focusing on iOS right now because the US and most of the people in the US are using iOS devices, but we'll sure get to the point that we do have an Android app. It's a bit kind of like old. We haven't updated it in ages, but again, we focus on the iOS for now. So yeah, sorry for Android users. I love both Google and Apple. Nothing personal. Yeah.
Nothing personal. Let's see. It looks like Hal from East Bay Parks also put a comment in there talking about putting in data from ebparks.org.
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, I'll share again my screen so you can see my email. Feel free to reach out with any data points that you have, with any potential projects we can help you with. Our idea here is really to amplify what you do. And the people, like the beachgoers, they need this information, and you already have this information. We're just here to amplify it, right? So it's a win-win for the entire ecosystem. So please feel free to reach out.
Let's see. Getting lots of good comments in the chat. Troy said, amazing work. And it looks like we do have a hand raised. So Tanya?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Kind of. Let's see. Your volume is a little low.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what. Maybe I can put my in the chat. I was wanting to share my. We have the beach report. For 3 years, I think that where we push data for the water quality. So we include information.
We can barely hear you. I couldn't get the question. I'm sorry.
I put the info in the chat. Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay, I can talk. Sorry, Tanya. I also work with Tanya. I'm Naomi from Heal the Bay again, but yeah, we have the beach report card, which basically is taking bacteria data from across the whole state and then producing A through F grades And so that's updated weekly and something you guys could consider sort of like incorporating into the app. It takes into account enterococcus and fecal bacteria and total coliforms, and then produces a grade from that, also based on data from like the last 30 days. So it's a good assessment of the overall grade in that beach.
Can you thank you so much for that. Can you type your email in the chat? I'll kind of like send you a follow-up, and we'll get to learn more about what you do and how we can incorporate it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I see one question here from Jamie in terms of like marine coastal beaches and rivers and lakes. So I'll tell you, when we actually looked for information about rivers and lakes, we couldn't find weather, like kind of like water temperature, like waves if there are, or something like this. We could find information mostly about coastal beaches. So if you have a data repository that could actually help us to get this information as well, that would be incredible. So we're very much open. Obviously, it's part of the market. So yeah, that will be very very helpful if you know any data repository that could help us to get this information.
Awesome, great. Checking to make sure there's no other questions in the chat. Not seeing any currently, so just wanted to open up to the floor to see if there's any other questions about the presentation.
Yeah. Again, just thank you so much for inviting us. And again, I'll type my my email here. If you have any ideas, any APIs, any information, any projects, anything, we like crazy ideas. And again, it all goes to helping people to enjoy the best beach experience and just, you know, making it more digital as it should be, we think. So yeah, thank you so much for the time and for inviting us.
Great, well, thank you, Almog. We really appreciate it. And thank you for presenting today. So we'll move to our final presenter just for wrap up and discussing next steps. So Kat Fike, who's our Senior Environmental Scientist Supervisor from the Ocean Standards Unit.
Thanks, Beverly, and thanks for everyone who presented today and who joined us and was very engaged in the conversation. We will be planning our next beach water quality work group meeting, which will likely be in May, at the start of the mandated monitoring period, or in the early months of the mandated monitoring period, rather. And so please look to our email subscription announcements to see information about that when it comes out. We're also in the process, Beverly alluded to this, but we have a vacancy for this program, and Beverly's been covering for the past few months. We are in the process of starting to conduct interviews, so hopefully in the next month or two we will have that position filled, and we'll be able to really get back to some more intricate work on this program, diving into some of the bigger questions and challenges, as well as Beverly mentioned, starting to work on a couple of the other projects that we need to get to, like developing the 3-year grant agreements for 14 of our local agencies that conduct monitoring for the program, and working on the updates to the Beach Watch database with our IT department. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm available now, or you can contact me anytime outside of this meeting as well. So with that, I'm available to take some questions now, or we can always follow up later. Hearing no questions, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who works on this program. I really appreciate all of your hard work. And I also want to say a huge thank you to Beverly for all of her help managing the grants and facilitating this meeting. Her fellowship ends tomorrow, so we really appreciate everything that she's done for our team. And we can end early if no one has any questions. Great. All right. Well, look to your email subscription list announcements. If you are interested in attending the meeting in May, we'll probably announce it 3 to 4 weeks before the meeting. Have a good day, everyone.